Fatimatu Balde. On my immediate left is Miss Lalia E. Jawara. She is the principal scientific officer. Lalia also doubles as the Codex contact point and manager. And next to Lalia is Mrs. Safiatou Jobate. Shifting to my right hand is a gentleman, Mr. Lamin Jaite. Lamin is the principal scientific officer at the Food Safety and Quality Authority. Viewers, you are welcome to this talk show. This discussion is centered on the Codex activities in the Gambia. Codex in short is a standard setting body which was formed or created by the WHO and FAO to set standards on food. I have experts here to expound on the topic, and to start with Lamin, I would like you to give a recap of the issues discussed during the previous discussions, and also tell us the objective of Codex, the role of Codex standards in food safety, trade, and benefits Gambia stands to gain from this Codex.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Silva. Last week we had, like you said, we had another TV program where we were creating an awareness on Codex and Codex activities in the Gambia. So what we discussed was what Codex is, because in the Gambia, people don't seem to understand when we say Codex, what Codex is, what the objective of Codex are. So we were trying to create awareness in the Gambia at all levels for people to be more enlightened on what Codex is and their activities. So going back to your question on the objective of Codex. Codex, as you mentioned, is a standard setting body that was jointly established by FAO and WHO in 1963. Since then, Gambia, as a member or a signatory to the Codex Committee, has been actively participating in the standard development process in Codex. What Codex does is they develop standards that are aimed at facilitating trade and protecting public health globally. And it is the reference point for food safety all over the world. When two countries want to trade among themselves, the benchmark that they use to trade among themselves is Codex standards. And us as a regulatory body, when we want to regulate food, what the benchmark we use is also Codex standards. So in short, this is what we are here.
So what does Gambia stand to benefit from this?
Well, in the standard development process, because we have to trade among ourselves between us and other countries, us as a member of the Codex Commission, we participate in the national in the standard development process from scratch. So in the participation of that standard development, we also defend Gambia's interests in terms of how we want to safeguard public health, how we want our commodities to be traded. So obviously, when we participate in the standard development process, it becomes easy for us to domesticate these standards and use them for local and international trade, and also in the process safeguarding public health.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jawara, Lamin talked about Codex and public health. Would like you to take us through the importance of Codex to public health.
So thank you, Silva. I'm really happy to be here. So Codex, as you mentioned before, is a joint FAO-WHO program setting body. Now, with these programs, standard setting program, basically. Now, with this body, you get to set standards. And these standards guide your commodities. If you want to trade with internationally, you get to go through certain processes. These standards guide you to go through scientific, do some laboratory tests, make sure your commodities are very up to scratch, and they can be used internationally. And you can also avoid people falling ill from foodborne illnesses, because most of these foods have contaminants on them. It could be microbiological, it could be chemical, and whilst you do all these processes to protect the food, you can it's internationally, this will allow it to be internationally accepted. Okay, so that's what these standards are for.
You talked about laboratory tests. Talking about that, are we up to speed as a country?
Well, there are things in place. There are lots of food safety labs in place, but it's fragmented, and we need to build more capacity. And Codex, if we follow the standards and abide to the regulations, we can meet these standards, but we have to build capacity.
In building capacity, which is very important, tell us the reason why we need to invest resources in order to make so we encourage Codex activities.
Okay, so, with funding and easy funding, it will facilitate a lot of work. Now, we recently set up the National Codex Committee to allow the work of Codex to facilitate the work of Codex. And we'll be setting other subsidiary committees as well to help with the work. And when you have to do, let's say, laboratory tests, you need money, you need funds to support labs, you need funds to support businesses, food processors, and things like that. But we need to concentrate a lot more on food testing and sampling to promote and facilitate trade and protect human health. So that's why we need the funding.
Thank you very much. Safiatou Jobate, you are a food inspector at the Food Control Directorate. Can you please take us through or tell us food safety activities that correlate with Codex rather?
Okay, thank you very much, Silver. Actually, the Food Safety and Quality Authority under the Food Control Directorate, we basically focus on food inspections. And this food inspection is so broad, and we inspect foods that are imported, that stand for other countries, exported, that stand for other countries. So all these foods that should be exported or imported into the country have to meet the Codex standards. So these Codex standards, they are international standards, but then the Gambia, under food safety, we domesticate these standards to fit for the Gambia. So there are some standards that the Gambia cannot use based on the settings, but then standards that the country can use, the FSQA will use that to inspect foods that should be exported or imported or locally sold. Those foods should meet the requirements, and these standards are based on it's based on safety and quality. So during inspection, we are focused on the safety of the food to protect human health and also the quality. So during inspection, like Lalia mentioned earlier, laboratory tests, which is very important. There are particular foods that are to be tested before they are exported, especially for the smoked fish or catfish. So it has to, especially if it is going to the EU market, you have to produce a certificate, laboratory certificate, to ensure the food meets the required standard to be exported to the EU market.
Fantastic. You talked about the required standards, and Lalia would like you to tell us those standards, like labeling rules, hygiene and protection in food production.
Okay. So we have a few standards that we use from Codex. They have standards for food hygiene. They also have guidelines. There's food hygiene, there's pesticide residue, there's for veterinary drugs. They've done a lot of research, and they've come up with maximum residue limits for drugs, animal drugs in meat products and poultry. They've come up with guidelines for residue in pesticides, and these are fruits and veg. We use a lot of pesticides to protect our food from pests and plant-based illnesses, and these leave residue, and these residues can pose illnesses later on. You can end up getting things like cancer after a while because you've been exposed to so much chemicals. For instance, the watermelons, and we also have, it depends on the attitude as well. Yeah, farmers that will just use pesticides anyhow. Our borders are porous, pesticides come in anyhow. But these guidelines and these standards actually control these things, okay? You've got guidelines for labeling, you've got guidelines for the traceability, in case your product has issues and you have to trace it back to where it came from. Okay, so and as time goes, they're also developing new ones as well, depending on what is needed and the food product that comes up. Yeah.
Yeah. Lamin, Lalia talked about farmers using pesticides on watermelon. What do you think can be done to discourage this practice?
Well, as a country and as a regulatory body, we are not the only players in protecting the safety and quality of food in the Gambia. When we say food safety, it starts from the farm and to the fork. That is in the sense that from production at the farm level to when the food is placed on our table for consumption. So we have partner institutions like the Ministry of Agriculture that is heavily investing in farmer field training, trying to educate them on the best practices. So at the farm level, what is expected of farmers is to implement what we call good agricultural practices. And at the level of codex, there are standards that are based on good agricultural practices, that is telling farmers what to do and what not to do, especially in relation to pesticides, how it should be applied, when to apply it, and in what concentration should you apply it as well. So all of these things are important because if you do it wrong, at the end of the day, what you put on the table for consumption is something that is not safe for consumption, because if you consume it because it has something or it has chemical, is exposed to certain chemicals like the pesticides at very high levels, you can actually, if the concentration is just so high, you can actually suffer for what we call acute illnesses. You can actually suffer from that moment. You can be poisoned from it, maybe in a day or two or a week or so. You can also, if it is in small doses, in small concentration, it can accumulate in your system. Probably in the next 10 or 15 or so years, it develops into things like what Lalia is saying, cancer. And then you start developing cancers out of it, and then and getting sick, and then eventually die because of it. So this is why it is important to pay attention to what really Codex is trying to educate and try to actually standardize, and also us as a regulatory body trying to regulate by domesticating these things and trying to safeguard public health.
Thank you very much. And attention has been on Codex on international trade. Can we come down to the local trade? Codex on local trade.
Right.
Tell us something about it.
Like I said earlier, in these standards, all these standards we were talking about, Gambia actively participate in the development of these standards. By virtue of us participating in the development of this standard, we can actually use this standard to actually regulate or govern food safety in the Gambia. So in as much as we are trying to ensure that what we export to the international market is safe and wholesome, we are also paying attention to what we actually consume locally, what is being produced locally, and what we are importing into the country locally. And the benchmark we use to actually safeguard public health in the context of these products that we are talking about locally, we use Codex to actually address quality issues, because the Codex standard will address quality parameters that we actually have to focus on to say that this food is quality. These are the set principles, or these are the set things that the food has to, or set characteristics that the food has to possess to be actually considered as quality food. When it comes to the safety component, in terms of chemicals, in terms of microorganisms that can actually harm people, in terms of physical contaminants like metals, stones, and all of these things that can actually have a negative impact on human health, the Codex standard also, specific to that particular commodity, will outline, for example, if you are talking about a chemical A, for example, if you are talking about aflatoxin, or if you are talking about, let's say, bleach, for example, or if you are talking about, let's say, heavy metals, for example, the Codex standard will tell you that this particular food should not have this heavy metal or this chemical contaminant past a certain level, and this level will be indicated. For example, if they say 0.1 micrograms per kilograms, it has to not exceed that for us to allow it in our market. So this is what it does. For microorganisms as well, it will tell you that this concentration of microorganisms cannot be present in the food, or this particular type of microorganism should be totally absent from the food. So all of these things have to be governed through using this international set standard that we also use to safeguard both local how do you call it, trade, and in as much as international trade as well.
Thank you. Lalia, in ensuring that Codex is well understood, and also these things that we discussing address, collective ownership of Codex standards is required. And in doing so as well, the public's participation is very key. Can you help on this? How can the public contribute in ensuring that this is successfully achieved?
Okay, that's a good one, Silva. So what we've started doing so far, we're going around and through the Codex Trust Fund, we're sensitizing the general public, consumers, and there's a body, the CPAG. They're also our eyes and ears. They also help, and they're well aware. So whenever they see issues with food, they will call us as well. But then the sensitization activities have been really key. We've gone all over the country, all the way to Basse, and we did a lot of sensitization. And this World Food Safety Day is also a big deal, and it tells people what is happening, what Codex's work is. The NCC, the National Codex Committee, is also key in doing so. And we use people from, directors, government people, to push the agenda, to harness funding, and this is how we can reach the population, really. Yeah.
Awesome. Safi, what are the Codex activities in the country?
Yeah, like Larry rightly said, the sensitization currently going on the through the trust fund, it's something that have been so helpful. Initially, before the food safety thing that we have started, this sensitization is also to promote the Codex, the work that Codex does, and the food safety. And the launching was done in December. Yes, the Codex committee launch was done in December, and like she said, the government officials, like the current chairman is in Nana, like those people, individuals are used to push the agenda. We are doing all these TV shows, radio programs to sensitize people, to ensure people are well aware of the Codex standards.
And health officials as well.
Yes.
Health officials.
So, health officials.
Yeah. So these things, like the standard is not only to be used by food safety, but also the producers, the consumers. Everyone is involved. So through this sensitization, how to call it, the quality and safety standards used through Codex people will be enlightened about it, and they will understand what they should do to ensure safe and quality food is produced for consumers.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know we are pressed for time, but I want us to also come back home and discuss some activities, some of the activities we do as an authority, food safety. And Safi, the food control department, you carry out daily activities, daily inspection activities. I understand inspection is now risk-based. Can you tell us what we mean when we say risk-based inspection? What do we mean by risk-based inspection, and which areas do we target?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like when we say risk-based inspection, it's not like going out just inspecting, but then we inspect based on the foods that we think, we feel, and we are sure they are at more risk to the human health. Like it is science-based. Actually, whatever food safety does, it's just science-based. The inspection is done on science-based. It has to be facts. So
as a result, do you go to markets, mini markets?
Yes, we go to the markets, ranging from the markets, mini market, supermarket. But then, inspection schedules like we do are based on those high-risk foods. Like, let's say we are inspecting supermarkets, mini markets, restaurants. Our target if they are to be placed on a balance, we will target restaurants, because restaurants are ready to eat food. Like there is high risk during restaurant food preparations than those that are sold in supermarkets. So the inspection will be given, inspection of restaurants will be given more priority compared to that of supermarkets.
So
because
about the
supermarkets,
street foods?
yes, inspection to the street foods, restaurants, supermarkets. Supermarkets you have packaged foods, but then these ones are just sold openly. Like we consider their health certificates. That is a prerequisite. We have to be sure that your health is in conformity with the work that you are doing.
And their validity as well.
Exactly. It has to be a valid medical certificate. It is not like you having it once in a lifetime and you are done with it. It has to be every 6 months.
Like someone
Yes.
from Jawakunda.
Like it has to be every 6 months. It has to be valid. We consider hygiene, personal hygiene, your environment. This is why we say quality and safety. It has to be, food has to be kept in a very safe environment. The surroundings. It's not like you cleaning here, that's where you cook.
Do you
but
also keep an eye
surrounding.
on the vendor? The
Exactly. That
PPEs?
is why I said the personal hygiene. That is
Okay.
where the aprons come, the head covers, your fingernails, hanging jewelries. All those are not allowed. If we go to an establishment to inspect, it's not like we are looking at the food, but we are looking at the personnel preparing the
Dealing
food.
with the food.
Yes, the environment, your employees, everyone involved. That is why first things that we address are medical certificate, personal hygiene. Your staff, do they have aprons? Do you clean? We look at everything.
Bakeries?
Yes, bakeries as well. You look at everything. It's
Lalia
been
likes
stressful.
bread.
Yes,
I love
it's been
bread.
stressful with
He
bakeries.
she
But
loves
the
bread.
office is doing a lot of work. We have closed so many bakeries, whether we know it, whether the public knows or not. We have closed, personally, I closed a bakery. The guy has to come to the office to bake. Yes, we do that every day.
And there's-
But we
there's
have
zero
to ensure,
tolerance for-
yes, we have to enforce, sometimes with immediate effect. You have to clean or we close. Some of them will comply, but others will not comply. And this is non-compliance. We have to proceed. And
So
we
when you go to
prosecute.
supermarkets or mini markets, do you look out for expiry dates?
Yes, we look out for expiry dates, look out for cleaning on the shelf, arrangements, everything inclusive.
And
And,
the water companies as well.
Yes, water factories, we
Water
will look out
factories.
for your, how to call it, excuse me, your filters, like, because it's very, very key. Yeah, the filters they use, what type of filters they use, it has to be accurate. It's not like you just filter, but you have to have different components of filters. That is where you have the UV filters and all those filters involved. The personnel, your employees, the packaging, it's not like you have to cap on your own. It has to be, how to call it, in accordance
it has to
with
follow
the standards.
a holistic. Yeah.
Exactly. It has to take a
Approach.
flow whereby there will be no interruption, like a hand coming in. That is to save what the consumers are eating. The consumers have every right to eat safe food, to eat or drink safe food.
Awesome.
Yes, you have to make sure before it gets to the market, it is safe. Then that we come to the consumers. When you are buying something, make sure what you are buying is wholesome. Take care of it until you eat. That is why Lamin said from farm to fork.
And the
It has to
consumer-
be
okay.
safe. And if there are frozen foods, the cold chain shouldn't be broken.
True.
Yes. For example, we have eggs.
I will come back to you later. Lamin, she talked about food establishments meeting the requirements, and now there is a procedure they have to follow. In order to meet that requirement, you have to register. Can you tell us what the registration is about, what it entails?
Okay. Like you said, us as a regulatory body,
Quickly, we have
As
under
for
5
time, okay.
minutes.
us as a regulatory body, we have to regulate. And the best tool for us to regulate is to have regulations in place. And one of our most important regulations is the registration and licensing regulation, which has been enacted or passed in 2020. So that law, what that law does is, before any food establishment operates in this country, you have to be registered and licensed by the authority. You have to register with the authority and be licensed by the authority to operate. If you don't do this, it means you are operating illegally. And before the authority issues you the license, you have to apply, and there are certain requirements that you have to meet. And then when you submit,
what are those requirements?
Yes, for example, if you are a manufacturing company, you have to have food safety systems in place. You have to have a documented food safety system in place that will tell you what and what not to do. The process that you are doing, the personnel that are actually processing the food, and the product itself. That is why we call it the 3 Ps: the personnel, the premises, and the product. It has to ensure and it has to indicate how you manage the personnel so that they don't contaminate the food, how the process itself, how you manage the process so that the food is not contaminated during the process, how you actually ensure the product that you are leaving out in the market. So
after meeting those requirements?
Then if you meet the requirements, before you submit the requirement, because if you're applying, you apply. You write and apply, and you tender in those documentation. When you do that, the inspectorate department, that is the Food Control Directorate, will go on the ground and inspect, because what is documented and what is happening on the ground might be different. So the inspectors will go to your facility and inspect and ensure that what is documented is actually what is happening on the ground before the authority license you to operate. But if you are licensed to operate, it means you have to adhere to these standards that are set. If you fail sort of these requirements, we can revoke your license. So it means the authority has the power to set a leveling playing field and ensure that the
so now food business operators are invited to come and register with the authority.
Yes. Most definitely.
And we are situated at the traffic lights, just on top of Right Choice Supermarket.
Exactly.
And just shortly, we are pressed for time. The authority is bracing for a mega event. We are about to launch a regulation, which is slated for July 7th. Maybe we can just inform the public briefly what this regulation is about and who is to grace the event.
Okay. All right. So
in 1 minute. In 1 minute.
Wow. Yes. So Food Fortification Project has been around for a while now. And they're launching, they've done a lot of work, and they finally came up with a regulation. So the regulation will be launched on the 7th of July, and the President of His Excellency, the President of the Gambia, will be there. And the focal point, yours truly, Lamin Jaita, and the regulations were developed in consultation with stakeholders and partners, and it was developed by the legal officer, Mary Johnson. So it's a whole team, and it's supported by FAO. So it'll be a good event, and it will be a way to say thank you and a job well done to the team.
We're looking forward to seeing the President, His Excellency.
And just one more thing. We're located at traffic light above,
above
Right Choice. But for now, there's a signboard that doesn't say food safety. So food safety. Just let them know they shouldn't run away.
Right, they shouldn't run away. Yeah. Well, viewers, that does it for this program. We hope to return next week for another discussion on the Codex activities. I was your host, Etienne Silva. Thank you for watching, and it's a bye from now.